In this video, I'll show you how to add your data and transform it with PostgreSQL. So first, let's open up pgadmin 4. You might be prompted to enter in your master password, which was what we set it up with. For me, that was just Postgres. So we'll open up servers, PostgreSQL 16, databases, and then whatever database we have. If you do not have one, you can right-click and use Create. So we want to add the extension PostGIS, which is not downloaded, but that's not an issue. We will go download it now. So open up a new tab, PostGIS download. So we'll look at the installing on Windows. You can go back a tab to getting started if you have a different system, but we will go to installing on Windows. We'll go to latest released version and scroll down to the zip and installer files. We have PG16, Postgres 16, and we will do this bundle here, the exe, the executable. So we'll go to Documents and Mapathon, and I'll just download that here. Great, and let's run it. More info, run anyway. Yes. Okay, we will go to I agree. The defaults are fine. So this is wherever your PostgreSQL is. That's where mine is. It automatically detects it, hopefully. Next. Close. So let's go back to here and we'll do refresh. Great. And now we have PostGIS. And again, if it's not there, then you can do create extension and do the drop down PostGIS. Great. So we've got that set up. So now that we've got the extension added, let's go to QGIS and open our files. So all the files that we want should be in our Mapathon folder. Okay. So we've got counties, the statutory boundaries here. We've got our nuts classes here. And we have our land cover information here. We also want to add our table. So let's go back to our policy Google Sheets and download as an Excel. Okay. Great. Now, if we go to QGIS and refresh, here is our Irish policies. Great. So now that we've got everything added, let's go ahead and connect to our database. So we're going to go back up. You can close the Home tab. So we're going to right-click PostgreSQL and add new connection. The name, I'll put it as bog work. The host is localhost. The port is the default. The database is, for me, it's bog work. Whatever you put down for your database name, go ahead and put that. Work. And then let's test connection. The username is Postgres, and my password that I made when we set it up was Postgres. Obviously, whatever your password you made, that. Okay. Connection was successful. Great. So we'll say okay. Yes. All right. So we have our bog work connection. If we open it up, we have the public schema, but we don't have anything added yet. But because we have these layers open, what we can do is we go up to Database, to DB Manager, click on PostGIS, and we want the bog work connection, the public schema, and as you can see, these are not the info that we want, so we're going to say import layer/file. So for each of these, let's start with the nuts classifications. So I'll say table nuts, primary key ID, geometry column geom. These are our source and target as our IDs. And we'll say create spatial index. Okay, great. Import was successful. Okay, so we'll do it again. So this time, let's do the counties. I'll do Irish counties, primary key, geometry column. We'll leave these as these SRIDs. We will transform them later. Create spatial index. Schema is public. Okay. Import successful. Okay, only two more. So next we'll do the Corrine schema, public, primary key, geometry column, SRIDs, spatial index. Okay. Import successful. All right, last one is policies. So geometry column is non-existent because we just have the policies. So let's say okay. Actually, table, I'll call it policies. Okay. Import successful. Great. So now if we go to PG admin, we open up public and tables. We just have the spatial reference system. So what we're going to do is we are going to right click and refresh. And now we have all of our data sets. So now let's work on transforming them. The first thing I'll show you how to do is to view the data. So we'll right click, go to view edit data, and we'll just do the first 100 rows because there's a lot in this one. So we have our ID, we have our geometry field, quite long, and then at the end we have object ID code 18. That was like the 411 and 412 that we're going to be using, and then these other categories. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to create a new table from this Corrine table that is going to only contain the fields where code 18 is equal to 411 or 412. So in order to do that, we are going to right click and open the query tool. So we'll say create table green heat as select, and then we're going to select the fields from Corrine. So we're going to open up Corrine and view the columns. So we want the ID, we want the geometry, and we want the code 18. So we'll say select ID, code 18, and geom from Corrine, the Corrine table, where code underscore 18 equals, and then we have to put this in quotes because technically this is a string. If you right click on object ID and go to properties, the data type is character varying. So it's not actually an integer. You have to say 411 in quotes. Then we'll say for code 18 equals in quotes 412. And now let's run it. Run successfully. So if we want to see the table, we're going to have to right click tables and refresh. And now we have Corrine Pete. So let's view and edit the first 100 rows. And here we have our 412 and 411s. So now we have only the kind of information that we want. So if we want, we can go back to QGIS and check on this. So if I go down to PostgreSQL and I connect to Bogwork, public schema. Here is our chlorine peat table that we just made. So if I double click that, I will have to bring it to the top. Now I can see all these orange areas are the peatlands. So we've successfully taken this chlorine land cover and transformed it down. So if I remove everything else, you can see that's what we have for our chlorine peat, which is great. So that's sorted. So next what we're going to do is go back to Postgres, and we are going to work on reprojecting our Irish counties information. So we will right click and go to Query Tool. So the query that we're going to use is alter table Irish counties, enter alter column geom, type geometry multi-polygon 3857. So the coordinate system EPSG 3857 is the coordinate system for OpenStreetMaps, which is going to be the base map of our map. So we want to reproject all of our data to this coordinate system. Using ST transform geom, 3857. Run it. Query returned successfully. Great. You might run into, there's two potential issues. The first is an error where it says that the source SRID isn't set or something like that. In that case, what you have to do is you have to say st set SRID and then geom and then whatever the original code was. So in this case, it might be 2157. The other potential error is getting a z dimension error, where it says the original coordinates is 3 dimensions, it needs to be 2 dimensions or otherwise. In that case, what you'll do is you'll say st force 2D. So those are the workarounds. But we already got it to work. So what we're going to do now is we are going to come back here. So to QGIS. So if you right click on the counties, this was our original shapefile. So if we go to information, we can see that the coordinate reference system was EPSG 2157. Okay. But if we refresh our PostgreSQL and open Irish counties and right click on this, properties, the coordinate system has been changed to 3857. So we can see here that this was done successfully. Before we move on, let's make sure that everything else is the correct coordinate system. So I'll right click on our nuts one, and this is 3857, perfect. Our chlorine land cover, well, actually I'll right click the one that we have in the Postgres database, properties, 3857. So we don't need to do any more coordinate reprojection, but you may need to do it locally. Just follow the same steps as before. You can go to query history to see what you've already done. So I can look at this and I can copy to query editor. So you would just do alter table, whatever table you need to update, and then alter column geom. And then this all stays the same. Unless you have to do, like I said, the setting of the SRID or the force 2D or force 3D. So what we're going to do now is we are going to go back to our chlorine peat table. and we are going to create a new field. So right now we only have these columns, ID, code 18, and geom. But this isn't very descriptive, the 412 and 411. So we want to add another column, which is going to say what 411 and 412 are. In order to do this, we are going to right-click Corey Pete and open our query tool again. And we are going to say alter table Corey Pete, add, and we'll call the column soil type. And then we have to say what kind of data is going to be in this. So because we're just going to want a description like marsh or peat bog, we're going to say var car and then 255 in parentheses. So we'll say execute. And then if we refresh, we'll see we have soil type. So if I view these, view edit data, and I go to the end where we have soil type, it's null. So we now need to populate this column. So what we're going to do is we are going to say update Corey Pete, set soil type equal to marsh, where code underscore 18 is equal to 411. And that's just using the information that we got from the Corey fields site. So I run this. Great. And I'll put peat bog and 412. Run. Great. And now if we view our first 100 rows, so let's scroll over here. And now we can see we have peat bog and marsh updated dynamically. So now whenever we click on our map, we're going to be able to see the kind of site type, which is, again, more informative than just 411 or 412. Now, lastly, we want to georeference our policies. So let's take a look at our policies. And there are many more rows than we have data, which probably has to do with the fact that it was an Excel file. Okay, so really quick, let's fix that. So our IDs end at 29. Everything above it looks like it's empty. So we're going to do query tool, and we're going to say delete from policies where ID greater than 29. Okay, so it deleted that. So if we go back and refresh this, great, we've got only 29. Okay, now what we want to look at is the names. So let's have a look at nuts. So nuts is going to be our reference for all of the terminology and all the geometry that we're going to use. So let's do a better nuts query. So looking at the nuts columns, we have all of these. So let's make a query that says select, because we don't want to have to scroll through all these different names. Let's say select ID, nuts, ID, level, code, country, code, name, Latin. from, and okay, we'll run this. And this has all sorts of country codes. So let's say where country code is IE for Ireland. Okay, that's better. So Ireland for the that's one level, and then for two, we've got the three Eastern Midland, Northern, Western, Southern, and then Southwest, all of these. So we just want to make sure that, so these have the first letters capitalized except for the ands. It has some hyphens. So we just want to make sure that our policies have everything the same. So, yep, this all looks good. Okay, just be careful when you're doing your own um, policy documents, own policy spreadsheets, that you are paying attention to the nuts spelling and terminology because that is going to be a reference, at least for these first few levels. We have the counties separately, but we'll handle that later. Okay, so we've taken a look, we've checked that the names that we're going to use, the naming conventions, are consistent. So now let's close out some of these. Okay, and let's create a new query. So we'll do it off policies, and let's create a new table that says it's going to be our georeferenced policies. So create table geopol as select all from policy. So what this query is doing, this is just selecting everything from the policies, which if we ran it on its own, would just bring up the entire policies table. But we're creating a new table, geopol, from that query. So let's run it. Great. So we've created a duplicate, basically. And if we refresh, we can see geopol there. But let's do one more change. Let's say alter table geopol. And we're going to add another column. Add geometry. So the column name is geom and the column data type is geometry. So let's run that. Great. So let's have a look at our geopol. So we've got all of that. And if we scroll to the very end, we can see geometry, which is empty. So now the way we're going to be doing this is we're going to take the information from our nuts table, and we're going to say wherever the policy level is national, we're going to use the shapefile of Ireland. And then when it comes down to regional, we're going to say, all right, we're going to use the nuts2 name. But if we do have the nuts3 name, then we will go ahead and use that then as well. And then when it comes down to county, we'll use our counties. But let's start with national. So we will start our query and we will say update geopol. So we're going to set geom, our geometry field, equal to the nuts geometry field. But now we have to say which nuts geometry field. Well, we're going to select it, well, from the nuts table. And then we're going to say where the geopol level is national. And just in case, we're going to say the nuts country, the NTR, country code is IE. And then geopol nuts1 name equal to the nuts name Latin. Okay, so let's run this. Okay, and it updated 20 of our elements. So let's view those. Actually, we'll do query tool and we'll say select all from geo. Okay, so now if we go, we can see some of the geometry for some of them. Let's say select all from geopol where level equals national. Okay, great. So if we go over here, we can see, yep, we've got all that geom. Great. Next, let's go back here and we will say update geopol set geom equal to nuts geom from nuts where geopol level is regional. And we will say that nuts to name is equal to the nuts name Latin. So we will run that. Okay, that worked. And now we'll say more specifically nuts 3 if there's one that exists there. Yes, okay. So now if we go back and we say where level is not equal to national. Okay. You know what? So let's change this to level. Nuts 2 name, because we know that nuts 1 name is Ireland. Nuts 3 name, local, auth, and geom from geopol, where level is not national. Okay, so we can see these are the regional things that we have, and here are the geometries, and we can view the geometries by clicking that. So we can see, yep, we've got West, Midlands, and border. Perfect. So now let's do the county. So we'll go back here and we will update this. So we're going to update geopol again. The reference that we're using is not nuts this time. It is Irish counties from Irish counties, where geopol level is county. We don't have any nuts code in here. We know it's Ireland. And okay, so now we need to check what the name is. All right, so we will see the Irish counties columns, geometry, English. Okay, so what we want to see is probably English. So we will query tool, select English from Irish counties. All right, okay. So as you can see, these are all uppercase, and Postgres or SQL is case sensitive. So what we're going to want in this query, we want the geopol local authority name to be the same as what the Irish county's English name is. But in our county names, we have the first letter capitalized. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a function around this called init cap, which is going to capitalize the first letter of the word only, and everything else will be lowercase. So this should be good to go now. Great. Okay, looks like it was. And now let's execute this. Great. Now we have geometry for everything. So let's view the geometry. Great. So we've got this, which is Midlands, no county information there necessarily. Here we have Monaghan, we have Longford, Roscommon, Westmeath, Offaly, and Galway. All our policies are now successfully georeferenced. So now what's left is to add everything to GeoServer and deploy the website on GitHub. You will need to have the Postgres database running on the same computer, the same local host as your GeoServer instance and as your Flask app through the GitHub. So if you do need to move these files onto another computer, what you can do is you right click and you say, I want to back up. You save the file. So we'll say documents, mapathon, and this is what, Irish counties? Yes. So Irish counties. And I will save it. Back up. Process started. Process completed. Okay. And so you can save that file, send that file. And then what you'll do, so I could delete this now. Yes. And now what I would do is I would go up to public and right click and say restore. And I will upload the file that I have. Restore. Okay. So if I now refresh, I have my Irish counties back. And if I go to view my data, I can see that everything successfully loaded. So again, if you need to move any files between computers, you can use the backup and restore. All right, I will see you in the next video.